It's Jefferson, climbs the ladder. Oh my goodness! Come
on! What is going on, everyone? AP over here at Run Pure Sports, bringing to you once again. We got the Lineup Builder Show with our partners, SaberSim. I got my guys Rubio and Glock in here today. Before we kick it to them, before we bring them in, a couple housekeeping items. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe, helps us out a lot. We are running a promo right now, Summer 33. It's going to get you 33% off any monthly, weekly package over here at Run Pure Sports. It's going through all summer, so make sure you get in on that. Also, we've been doing these contests. Predict the game score, who wins, and what the final points are going to be for each team. Put it in the comments, not the YouTube chat, but put it in the actual comments. We got 3 winners, so a lot of you are close with this score prediction. So, behind the scenes, us 3 decided. We had 3 winners. Let's shout all of those individuals out. First, Alabama Jones. Hit us up on Twitter. You can hit me up in Discord also, but you can shoot a message, a DM to the Run Pure Sports Twitter account, and we'll get you taken care of. That's Alabama Jones. DFS Rez the Goat, you were our second winner. And then LeBrier, you were our third winner. Again, hit us up, Run Pure Sports Twitter account. Shoot me a DM if you're in the Discord. Do that. We'll get you taken care of. We'll get you hooked up with a bunch of Run Pure Sports swag. So we're on to game 4. Denver obviously is up 2 games to 1. I want to do a quick review. So we've done this 3 times now. We've seen we got 3 different captain optimals, which is interesting. Game 1, it was Hayward Highsmith. So that was one of the first adjustments that Spoelstra made. And there's going to be one correlation that I've seen, a very strong one through 3 games so far. That's Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Bam Adebayo in the utility spot, optimal in all 3 games. So game 1, we had Highsmith captain, Jokic, Murray, Bam, MPJ, Gabe Vincent. Game 2 was Gabe captain. Then we had Jokic, Murray, Bam, Max Strus, and Kevin Love. And then game 3, Christian Brown, not Braun, Brown. I still like to call him Braun.
Same.
It makes sense. And then we had Jokic, Murray, Bam. We had Aaron Gordon, and then Kyle Lowry. So we have that strong correlation there of Jokic, Murray, Bam. And the other thing I do is I like to personally track what are the prices doing for these individual players throughout the series. Well, naturally, Jokic has gone up every single game. He started off this series at 14K in the utility spot. He's now 15.6. Jamal Murray has obviously gone up. He started 10.8 at the utility spot. Now he's 11.6. And then on the Heat side, we continue to have it's kind of leveled out, but they're all still trending downwards. So it's just something to keep in mind in the back of your head, because pricing matters, rotations matter, and usage, many other things that matter when it comes to NBA DFS, and especially Showdown. So quick little review there, a quick little recap. We're going to dive on in, starting with my guy Glock. Glock, what was your game 3 takeaways and overall thoughts so far in the series?
Yeah, I feel like I keep getting some things right and then some things wrong, obviously. If you watch the last show, I was like, MPJ has to play well, in order for the Nuggets to win. And that was exactly opposite of the case. Like, he rode Pine for Christian Brown, as it's pronounced exactly right how it should be. But yeah, I think the funniest part is, like, I saw some jokes on Twitter where they were like, I clicked on the wrong Brown, and we were kind of touting Bruce Brown, obviously, as a guy that could change the script of the game. And obviously he played 29 minutes, did pretty well in his time there, but it was that Christian Brown guy that you really needed to get exposure to. And he's a guy that I haven't really been clicking on, all series. Maybe when I 150 the game 1, I had some of him, but when I'm running 20 to 30 lineups, it's funny because, like, him and Zeller are like kind of the first guys I ignore. Like, when I run my opto, like, I'll just skip past those teams because, like, I wasn't really banking on a big Christian Brown performance, but it was obvious that, he was the key to them winning. And one video that I saw on Twitter, and I noticed it during the game, is the adjustment that the Nuggets made versus Miami zone. If you saw in game 2, Jokic, he was getting the ball a lot in the high post, kind of similarly to how Bam gets in the high post. One adjustment that Denver made was they started posting Jokic up towards near the baseline. And that's basically where the gap is in Miami zone, because the 3 guards are generally towards the top of the key. And then, Bam is kind of in the middle stalking. And so by Jokic getting the ball towards the baseline, on the backside, he catches the ball, he's posting up, and then on the backside, it's a 2-on-1. And there was multiple times where Christian Brown or Aaron Gordon, like they cut from the 3-point line baseline all the way to the basket, and they're just wide open for, a dunk or, a slash. So that's how you break Miami zone. And I expect to see more of that today. I expect to see, whoever it is, Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, MPJ, either of those guys, they're going to eat. One of those guys are going to eat. And we kind of touched on it where, we kind of wanted to group away some of these guys in the show previous, but yeah, we'll get into it. And yeah, I mean, I just feel like that adjustment that Malone made, credit to him, where, they're posting on Jokic on the baseline more in that zone whenever Miami's in the zone. I don't see how Miami can counter it. Like maybe they play less zone and they just play more straight up, but there's really no counter to it because Jokic is such a great passer and he knows exactly what to do. Like, the crew, the ESPN crew is just like creaming over how good, and like he never makes mistakes. Like Jokic never makes the mistake. So I don't see how Miami can counter that. Maybe they play more straight up, but yeah, those are kind of my takeaways from game 3.
Yeah, I mean, that is a really good takeaway there. And it just goes to show that, and this is something that we've been talking about at the start of the series. And, when game 2 came, I know Big T got a bunch of texts probably, but, people kind of talking smack, the Miami backers. But when you just look at it on paper, it's just such a massive advantage. And then you have a coach in Jokic basically on the court to be able to facilitate those adjustments. So a really nice breakdown there, Glock. And, when I look at it, it does seem like you're going to see Miami revert back to their stronger lineup, more Caleb Martin. We've seen Lowry, get more run as well. Gabe, Max Strus, and most likely less of like Kevin Love, Duncan Robinson, but we'll see. Rubio, let me kick it over to you. What were your takeaways in game 3?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was, especially being overweight on Gabe Vincent, and even Bruce Brown was really kind of just meh in his time out in the court. It was a little bit tilting where, Gabe Vincent, especially picking up those 2 fouls, 3 fouls, and even though I'm backing the Nuggets here, I just felt bad. I'm like, some of these fouls in Gabe Vincent were so soft. You back him in fantasy, and he comes up and puts an absolute dud up. But, I mean, it just shows. I mean, even when Gabe Vincent only had 2 fouls, Lowry was being rolled out there quite a bit. And it does kind of feel like, man, Lowry's going to be out there. Gabe Vincent's going to be out there. They want this 2-point guard setup quite a bit. And that's something that they kind of ran toward the end, especially with Strus struggling, Duncan Robinson not being able to kind of defend really anyone. And like you said, Glock, when you kind of tweeted out that video, you said the Heat got no chance. I mean, God, you kind of just feel that way, right? Like Jokic was making the dime every single time. And Christian Brown, there's a guy who I was really low on last game. Like, I don't need a 1K guy in my teams. I'm usually loving the 1K guys. And he was 18% owned. He goes out and plays his best game of his career, absolutely slamming down a couple dunks out there too. And now he's 2.2K, going to get ownership. And it's really going to be quite a bit interesting to see how many people, how high owned Christian Brown comes in, because he was 18% last game. He comes out and absolutely dominates the headlines. I mean, I'm sure Jamal Murray had a triple-double. Nikola Jokic made history with a 30, 20, and 10. But Christian Brown has gotten a lot of talk, and not only in the DFS world, but like just in the national media alone, doing this as a rookie. I hope he gets ownership tonight. I'm going right back to the well. I'm sitting there. Christian Brown cannot play this damn good for a second game in a row. You know, when a 1K guy comes out there with a pep in his step and you fade him, I felt so bad after that first half. I'm like, I'm done.
Two games straight, actually.
The biggest adjustment too. I mean, Kevin Love, didn't get a third rotation stint, didn't get that second rotation stint in the second quarter. He made a couple threes in the third quarter to kind of bail us out a little bit. Now he's 3K. I really think that we do see quite a bit of ownership changes, especially down in this lower region. And even in the mid-tier, I mean, MPJ kind of clocking in with 2 stinkers in a row. Is he going to come in under owned? Is this a fact where, even though he had 7 boards last game, is this if the Heat do change their defensive format, going away from the zone, does that benefit a guy like MPJ who missed every single shot in game 1? It felt like 5 for 16 shooting, 2 for 11 from deep. Do we see more MPJ, potentially kind of clocking in on the optimal this week? Or this game, I should say. So, I mean, it's a lot of fun, tilting some golf right now, AP, but I'm looking forward to game 4 tonight. I'm glad we only had one day in between, and then we got to wait until Monday after today.
I mean, it really is kind of an interesting dynamic. Like if you're Coach Malone, knowing that you have a really solid core. Obviously, the 2-man game of Jokic and Jamal Murray is just insanely good. Like insanely good. I think it was our guy Big T that he tweeted out, right? Who are you taking as far as like a top two players on a team ahead of Murray and Jokic in today's NBA? And I thought about it. I don't know, man. I really don't know. I don't know who I'm taking over those 2 guys right now.
Zion
and
someone else.
Zion and one of his ladies. There you go. And you got such a solid core right now to where KCP's a vet. You know what he's doing. You got Jamal, AG, who's been awesome defensively, awesome on both ends of the court, and then obviously Jokic. And it's like now Malone knows, hey, if MPJ's not hitting his shots, if he's struggling, you got two nice pivots, Bruce Brown, Christian Brown, 2 guys that can come in and play a key role there. So you got a lot of things going on the Nuggets' way right now, which is what we all thought. I think for Miami to win a game, it's just going to come down to shot making efficiency, and they're going to have to just be better. That's the only way I see them winning. I don't see like the mistakes that we saw in game 2. I just don't see Denver making a lot of those at this point in the series. So it's going to be really interesting, especially when you just think about it. Seems likely Miami maybe steals a win at home. Naturally, you would think that would happen if they got one, in Denver. But still, it's tough. I know we all lean the Nuggets here, but we'll try to keep it unbiased. And we're obviously
leaning the Nuggets.
Yeah, we obviously all of us. All we care about is making money. I mean, that's the goal of all of this. So, and speaking of that, if this is the first time that you're joining us, let me walk you through what we're doing here, what we're showing. This is SaberSim, and we're breaking down the Showdown slate, obviously, tonight. I have my AP biased projections loaded in. So these have been pretty consistent throughout the series. I've been very over on Jokic. I always have a big boy projection on him. I'm ahead of RPS, ahead of SaberSim. And then Bam's been the one that's been really nice. And obviously that price is coming up. I think MPJ is really the, interesting point there. And I think you do have to be careful with him in your builds. I don't want to full fade him tonight, but I want to make sure that I have scripts without him as well, since he is so shot dependent right now. And I don't like Christian Brown. I mean, Rubio, I guess my one counter there, because it seemed like you're leaning on fading him. The shots he's taking, if Miami isn't going to make an adjustment for what they're doing, he's slashing towards the rim. That's a high efficiency shot. A lot of them are dunks, layups right at the rim. If he's going to get those looks, and we all know what he can do defensively, so you got to think a couple stocks along with it. And at his price, it doesn't take too much to be optimal. But we have this rotation going on, and so I got questions for you guys throughout the stream as far as trying to nail down captain versus utility, since we do have a few strong correlations going on, it seems like. But before we do that, as always, let's dive into our base build using my projections. What is a base build? A base build is the first thing I always do. I call it my research build. Here's how the settings I have in step 2. I bring correlation all the way to 0. I bring sim diversity down to 1, which is basically like running a cash build. I do 150 lineups, 1,500 pool size, and I press go. I already have this ran, did it a little bit ago. Glock, I want to start with you. So let me just make this a little easier to see. You guys can see that fine, right? Yeah. Yeah. So right here, I'm getting a ton of Jokic, Bam, Gordon, Lowry, Gabe. Talk me through this. I know you've probably already ran one of your base builds, But what are you getting a lot of just off your base projections?
Yeah, so base projections are they're pretty obvious by now. And you kind of touched on it at the beginning of the show where it's a lot of Jokic, it's a lot of Bam, and it's a lot of Jamal, right? Those three guys are clearly the ones that have performed the best, to this point, and have the clear focal points of each offense. And, obviously we've seen Denver wins here, and in a Denver win, Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, they just have to be smashing. And we've seen Bam in wins or losses. He's come to perform. Like, he's looked amazing. I think this version of Bam Adebayo is what everyone hopes he could be. And if he keeps it up, I really can't call him Nigerian Rudy Gobert anymore. Like, I have to take away that title because he literally looks amazing right now. And, partly it is due to the Denver Nuggets game plan. I do think they're leaving him, wide open with their drop defense. So he is hitting these shots. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of Jokic that I'm seeing right now at captain, obviously in util. Bam, he's flooding the optimizer as well. Kevin Love at 3K, you're getting a lot of him, obviously in the util position and in captain. One thing that I think we should play around with on this stream is how do we get a Jokic captain? Because we haven't got it yet. And, even despite an 80 fantasy point performance last game, we didn't get it. And it's because of Jamal Murray putting up a 66 burger. But I think if you mess with that projection, and let's say like Jokic gets you like a 75, Jamal gets you a 50, and Bam gets you 45. Like, what is that threshold or gap that it takes that Jokic captain does pop? Because I think we're going to get it sooner or later. Maybe that's a bad take, but again, we're going to hammer it on this show. I think like it's another way to get different, because when you look at the opto, it's a lot of mid-range. After Jokic and Bam, it's a lot of mid-range captains just to where you can fit in, like this build right here that you have, the first one that came up, Aaron Gordon captain. It's giving you Jokic, Lowry, Bam, Strus, Gabe Vincent. All guys are going to play 20-plus minutes. I know Strus hasn't played like in the fourth quarter of any of this series, and I expect it to continue. But at a 4.4K, he's going to play 20 to 25 minutes at least. And he can get hot early on, especially at home, like we said in the last show. So I'm going to try to mess around with the numbers to see how much Jokic captain I can really get, because Jokic, Bam, or Murray, because I think those, expensive tiered captains are the way to reduce the chop. Obviously, there was a really nice chop last game with Christian Brown at the captain spot, but I don't expect it to happen again. And, that's how I'm going to be trying to get different.
You know what the other optimal was? So there's actually two optimals, and they're different builds, and they landed on the exact same number, which was interesting. And no one had the other one. It was a Jamal Murray captain, actually, with Christian Brown. That was almost like an in between Braun and Brown. With him in the utility spot, and they had a 1K guy in there. It was Reggie Jackson. So I thought that was interesting. And
did he log any fantasy points? Reggie?
He logged 3.25.
Oh.
Yeah. So then it was our three horses too. It was Jokic, it was Jokic and Bam, and then Christian Brown, and then who was the other
really
guy?
Throwing us.
Kyle Lowry, I think. Kyle Lowry. I know he is.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting because what I did after for game 3, I just eliminated Jokic from my captain. I'm like, man, his price keeps going up, even with like a big boy score and the prices coming down on the Miami side. I didn't feel like I felt like likely we're going to see a different captain. Unfortunately, I was under on our guy, Christian Brown, because I was really close otherwise. And that was something we talked about last stream too. I thought the Murray one was interesting. It was right there. No one had that build. And if Reggie Jackson would have done a little bit more, it would have been you could have solo shipped last time. So I thought that was pretty interesting. We're getting close to where maybe we see one of these studs get there in the captain, because we haven't seen it yet. And a lot of that is just pricing coming down. And then you have, with the value on the Heat side, I think it does make it tough for us to get to a Jokic captain build. Rubio, same question over to you. What are you seeing here off your first base runs? I know you were really high on Jokic captain for game 3, which you had it, which again, Ruby, you had it right because Jokic went absolutely off. I mean, put up a monster game, and he was optimal all the way until like 5 minutes left in the game.
Yeah, I mean, Jamal Murray went absolutely nuclear in that last 4 minutes there. I think he got his triple-double. He also had a couple shots, too, where it was just like, damn, you had to have Jamal Murray. It felt like they didn't have any chance at optimal, and that's tough to do if you want Bam and Jamal. If you have Jokic and captain, it's almost impossible, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's one thing where it depends on where you project Murray, I think, tonight to see if you get Jokic captain. If you have Murray at like 45 or less, which – not like out of the ordinary or anything like that, I think you're going to land on a lot more Jokic captain than you think. But if you do project Murray up there into the low 50s, maybe 50 on the dot, along with Bam too, in the low 40s, you're going to end up with a lot of mid-tier captain too, a lot of cheap captain as well. So I think it's obvious. You see it right there. You got a lot of Kyle Lowry, even Aaron Gordon, where he had 11, 10, 5 last game, which I know you had him at captain too. I mean, that was one of those things where Gordon was seemingly always involved. He was the cutter on a lot of those Jokic, mid-tier posts there, as Glock was saying earlier in the show. And Gordon was a primary beneficiary. And, MPJ, even with KCP getting foul trouble, Bruce Brown really didn't look too effective last game. It was more of a catch-and-shoot guy. He didn't really run the offense at all. And that's because, well, it's obvious. It's Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic's show. Why would you take a ball out of their hand? And when you see those two in the game, the usage is going to be really thin across the board. I think that's why Christian Brown kind of shined too, where I couldn't believe he was the optimal captain. I could have said, you could have had me do anything. There's no chance in hell Christian Brown's the optimal captain. Sure enough, he was. It was pretty cool. I mean, we saw Reggie Jackson get in for almost a minute last game, right? It was when Jamal Murray left the game in the first quarter, gave him a small spell. And in one possession, he got the defensive rebound and got the assist. It's kind of funny knowing that he would have been optimal as well on that co-optimal team there. But it's tricky today. I mean, I think you can get aggressive. I talked about making the group a max of 2 between KCP, Brown, Gordon, and MPJ. I think I'm going to continue that as well. I might even separate Brown from MPJ at this point because Brown was literally playing over MPJ. And that was even with KCP foul trouble in the first quarter. And MPJ's minutes were still cut a little bit. So it's interesting. Obviously, Brown offers a way more defensive versatility, kind of another body to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of pass the ball on offense as well. Dish it out. That's the one I'm looking for.
Facilitate.
Yeah, facilitate. There we go. I like that. That has more syllables. But it's an interesting thing. I mean, you got my first run through had Jokic captain, and then I bump up Murray 5 points. I'm like, wow, I had Murray way too low. And all of a sudden, Jokic's captain grade went way down. And when I have Jokic captain, it's almost exclusively 4-2 Miami with Jokic at the captain, which makes a lot of sense. You think Jokic dominates the offensive side of the ball. You think he gets a lot of these fantasy points. I mean, there was a decent chance that Murray wasn't in the winner until he went absolutely nuclear there at the very end. So, yeah, I think I'm still on Jokic captain, but I'm really fiddling with this Jamal kind of conundrum. Kyle Lowry looks really good at the captain spot as well. And even a guy like Strus, where he shot like shit last game. I mean, pardon my French, but he was still very, very close to the optimal. And even in captain, he almost made it a run. I think his captain lineup was about 6 points back of the optimal as well. So I'm really just liking this Lowry captain, this mid-tier captain. And then if I'm willing to fade Murray, Jokic at captain, I mean, it's direct correlation, I think. I mean, sure enough, they do correlate together. I mean, one just got 80, one just got 66. But you think Murray has a bad game, it probably means Jokic goes off.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. One thing I wanted to highlight, and this was interesting. So one correlation that we've seen, and again, things could change. It doesn't mean that this is going to happen. It's how it has happened. It's Jokic, Murray, Bam. And it does make sense because when you think about what Denver wants to do, the 2-man game, like one thing that we've been consistent on is no matter what script you're running, we're going to keep Jokic up high. And the reason for that is he can do it in so many different ways. If he's not putting the team on his back and scoring, he's facilitating. And, we've seen that in the many different styles of games that he's already had. Jamal's just been incredible. And then you have Bam on the other side who is doing so much on both ends of the court. So it does make sense that we've seen the Jokic, Murray, Bam correlation in the utility spot. Now, I used my base projections, and what I wanted to see in my initial 150 that I ran, how many am I even getting of those builds? I feel like I've given those guys fair projections, I thought I was doing it in my head. So you can see we have 6 lineups. I would have put a max money on the overs. I would have thought I thought I would have had maybe 25 to 30 of those guys in the same utility spot. So that's interesting. If you think those 3 if you think it's once again going to be a Jokic, Murray, Bam utility type of game, it's interesting. And then what I wanted to see in those builds, okay, what does the captains look like? Kyle Lowry, Max Strus, Christian Brown, Jeff Green, and then looking at the pool. So my entire 150, you got a few Aaron Gordons, Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent. So I thought that was interesting. Glock, before we move on, I mean, what's your thoughts here? Like, do you think those 3 will find themselves in the utility for Game 4 once again? Is that something that you're even looking at all?
No, yeah, I totally agree with you. I feel like this whole series has been like that, just locking those 3 and then playing with the rest, like trying to figure out the puzzle, because that is where the key of the lineup is. Like, you don't know whether it's going to be a Gabe Vincent game. You don't know whether it's going to be a Kyle Lowry game. Obviously, I had no clue it was going to be a Christian Brown game. I think I had a lot of my lineups look like the optimal, but I had like Kevin Love there instead. So like the base builds are in the structures are similar, where, you know, we have our 3 locks, which are the workhorses, Jokic, Murray, Bam, and then figuring out the rest is the key. And like just do on pricing, you're going to see a lot of Gabe Vincent and Kyle Lowry, Max Strus together. It's kind of reminding me like, you know, we're kind of not playing the same slate, but in a way we are, because, you know, you're seeing like a lot of 3-3s, a lot of 4-2s favoring Miami side. And that's all just because of pricing. You know, especially when you have a cheap starter like Kevin Love, you're going to see a lot of him as well. So all the cheap guys like are funneling from the Miami side, because they're just going to be the guys that play 20 plus minutes. And like I said, like I'm seeing a lot of Kyle Lowry and Gabe Vincent. I would not group them out together. One thing to keep in mind is that they played 15 minutes together of overlap last game. And I could see more of that continuing. I see in the chat from Vitali, was there any coach speak about Lowry and a leg injury? Yeah, I did see that slip. But after the game, he said he feels fantastic. Like that's a direct quote from him. So we'll take it as it is. I know I'd be concerned just like you, Vitali, because, you know, in the Knicks series, I think he got hurt, a little banged up, and he barely played the next game. But I think Kyle Lowry, he's just had such a good tag. Obviously, he's going to come with a lot of ownership, but he's going to have to play a lot, I think. And obviously, that 2-guard lineup is something that Spo likes, something that they seem, you know, to have success with. So basically, you can mark up Vincent, Lowry, Bam, Jimmy, and then that 5th guy we've seen in every single game. Max Strus hasn't closed, and in the last 2 games, it's actually been Caleb Martin. So I actually like Caleb Martin. Marie Don, he says thoughts on Caleb Martin. I think from a tournament perspective, Caleb Martin is going to be a strong play just because based on pure ownership. And then, so yeah, I think it's like that 5th guy, it comes down to Caleb Martin or Duncan Robinson, basically. Whoever's playing hotter, I think Spo's going to give the leash to. But I think those 4 guys, Lowry, Vincent, Jimmy, and Bam, are kind of the guys that Spo wants to close with if he can.
Before I kick it over to Rubio, what's your thought? So you mentioned one of the adjustments that obviously the Nuggets made. Basically, the adjustment was moving. So Jokic likes to catch the ball at the high post. They had Lowry. They had guys clamping on, make it tough. Now he transitioned to kind of the mid-range,
baseline,
left to right, baseline of the court. What do you think now is what does Miami do to counter? Do you see any counters there that then they could make that would have an impact to the rotations?
Man, I think like they probably have to ditch the zone, because unless they have a different zone that they can play where Bam is not the only guy in the back line, like their zone isn't super traditional. Like it's kind of like a 3-2, like a 3-1-1, where the 3 guards are roaming and switching out on the perimeter while Bam is stalking the back. And I know it's kind of hard to explain. If you go to my Twitter, it's one of my most recent tweets, and you can kind of see it and like pause the frame. But Bam is basically like right under the basket, and then to his left and right, complete open area. And so instead of Jokic like being at the top of the key, he flashes to those open areas against the baseline, and then it makes the Miami defense collapse onto him, and then there's a 2-on-1 on the backside where Bam has to decide, okay, do I want to go out to the 3-point line guy, or do I want to guard the slasher? And then Jokic is just going to funnel it out to whoever is open, basically. So I think Miami, you may see less zone. That's kind of my prediction, I think, and more straight up defense. And in that script, I think a guy like Caleb Martin fits perfectly. Because, he's been a guy that they've leaned on defensive wise, for tough matchups. Like if you remember Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown from the last series, I think Caleb Martin fits the mold of the defense like that. If they want to ditch the zone, they can go to more man on man with Caleb Martin, which in turn would give Caleb Martin more minutes.
Yeah, I really like that call and agree completely. So what did I do right here? I made just one. We haven't actually made any rules yet when we've been doing this show. I see one I really like that I might implement for tonight's slate, and that's just having a group of Bam, Jokic, Murray, and just saying in every single build, I want at least 2 in the utility spot of those guys. So what is my hopes in doing this? We already saw from my base build that I only got 6 total lineups where all 3 were in the utility together. Now, I'm not saying it's a lock for 3 to be in it, this time. I think it's probably close to a lock that 2 of them are. And so I really like this rule. And I always just I feel like Showdown is a puzzle, and it's all about figuring out, predicting game scripts. And then the more pieces that you have and you're sure about, to your puzzle, the better. I think that's one of the pieces there potentially. So I like that rule. That's one I'm going to most likely implement, and we'll run it and we'll see what that looks like. Rubio, as far as adjustments go, kind of the same question for you that I sent asked Glock. What do you see heading into Game 4? Like, what can Miami do that we might not be thinking about that we could apply to DFS in the Showdown slate tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing was Caleb Martin getting a lot of minutes in Game 3, and I think that trend continues. And even though Kevin Love got 16 minutes last game, I feel like his minutes are a little bit fragile. I think that he might have a shorter leash, and it felt like his leash was pretty long there in the third quarter last game. After about 2 minutes, Denver went on a little run with 10 minutes left. And sitting there, I'm like, I talked about Kevin Love. I had him in most of my teams and stuff. I'm like, this son of a gun is going to take out Kevin Love so early. And he kept him in, thankfully. But then Caleb Martin came in and played the last 16 minutes of the game, right? I think that trend continues. I think you see a lot of Caleb Martin tonight. I think that if Strus and Duncan Robinson are shooting poorly, or especially Strus early, I think the leash on him might be a little bit short. I think Lowry comes in. I think we see a lot of this 2-point guard lineup. It's something that we saw early in the second quarter. We've seen it all series, but early in the second quarter last game before Vincent picked up a couple fouls, it cost Vincent quite a bit of playing time, I think. It cost him about 5 to 6 minutes. So you're going to see a lot more Vincent tonight. You're going to see a lot more Martin. I think Lowry's minutes kind of plateau at 30, which is great for the price tag, of course. And I think if you're looking at it, from that angle, right, you got Martin and Love. I honestly would group them away. I think Love's price at 3K has gotten up there a little bit, where if Love is playing extended minutes, you might be able to make the case that you can group them away. Love's price might be a little bit too low for that. But I know one rule that I really want to make, and it kind of goes on to what Glock had to say. Lowry and Vincent shared the court a lot. Well, who was at the expense of that? It was Strus and Robinson. I think you can do a max of 2 between Strus, Robinson, Lowry, and Vincent. And right now, you're going to get a lot of Lowry and Vincent. I mean, that's just the way it is, especially if you project Vincent for mid-20s, Lowry for low 20s. You're going to get a lot of that combo together. And I don't have a ton of Strus and Robinson because I got them projected in the high teens and mid-teens as well, respectively. So I think that that's a good rule because, Lowry's going to get those minutes at the expense of Strus or Robinson, and Martin's going to get the minutes at the expense of Kevin Love. And as for the Nuggets side of things, I mean, I talked about that group already, a max of 2 between MPJ, Gordon, Brown, KCP. I think I'm going to continue that as well. I mean, I think we do see less zone. I think that this zone got absolutely shredded last game. And, at the end of the day, you can also say, like, even though Denver shot a really good clip from, inside the paint and also, did really well offensively and won by 15. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a make or miss league. The Heat shot 31% from deep. Really poorly from the field as well. Maybe they just say, screw it. We got this zone. It's working well enough. We held Denver to 109, the best offense in the league. That's good enough. We just have to make shots. And if you want to treat it the same exact way as last game, I honestly don't see a huge problem with it. I mean, we've seen Spo and we've seen the Heat whenever they're down and out, right? I personally don't think the Heat have a chance to win this series, but it wouldn't surprise anyone if they came in and did really well, right? They make shots. Their expected points per shot is really low compared to Denver. But I mean, if they start making their shots, I mean, we can see this exact same defense play out. We can see the exact same offense play out. And this time we don't have foul trouble to deal with. And I think I might take that approach a little bit tonight. Don't anticipate too much of a change. But if I do make a change, like making MPJ into my teams and stuff, just sacrifice Brown. If I have Duncan Robinson, I won't have Lowry, stuff like that. And it should be like quite a bit of fun to decipher. I think I'm going to be treating it a lot like last game, to be quite honest. And, you know, the pricing's nice. And you got guys who are popping in captain. Like, you know, we obviously saw it with Christian Brown, but what if a guy like Jeff Green just straight up outperforms Christian Brown tonight? And I think Green comes in at a little bit lower ownership, and he intrigues me. And if you get him high enough, if you get Brown high enough and even Cody Zeller, right? Even just throwing that name out there, if you want to fade Bam, they can hit a captain with like only like a 7 or 8 projection tonight. And that's definitely in the cards for me.
Yeah, I mean, these builds are so strong too, where you have Jokic, Bam, Murray. So just real quick, like looking at this with that one rule, and that rule didn't lock all 3 in. That's not what we wanted to do. It did lock 2 of the 3 in. I'm really curious to see now how many we got. You can see a much higher number.
31.
31 lineups. So more in line kind of with what I like. And then you can see here the captains, they all look really nice. So, I mean, a little bit bigger of a captain pool, but I'm fine with that. And obviously the only people, so I unchecked, it was Jimmy Butler and Jokic from being captain options. We get Bam, we get Jamal. I kind of like that just because their prices are much lower. Glock, let me send this back over to you. I mean, some of these builds are nice. Like, what are you thinking here? Like, could we see? So a couple questions. One is Highsmith, and I thought he was awesome in game 1. We haven't seen him at all. And, the ability of having Highsmith in there, like if you're Miami, you gotta find a way to at least limit Jamal Murray, especially with MPJ struggling. So naturally, it seems like that is a move that you would want to make. Maybe more Jimmy on Jamal. Is Highsmith, is he just done, or is there any chance that we could see him again? I mean, it kind of overlaps with the other question because, Caleb Martin's your guy. And honestly, if he's in there, probably don't even need Highsmith. But do you think he at all enters the rotation again?
Yeah, I think he could. And that's another thing to buy into that uncertainty where, he was unowned the game he was optimal, mega chalk, basically DMP the next game, and DMP the game after. So I don't think people are going to be on him that much. And Highsmith is a guy that Spo kind of calls to kind of as a spark plug. So I think if you see Miami kind of go down 10, 15 points early, you're definitely going to Highsmith is definitely going to check in. I think Highsmith and Caleb Martin would check in together, and they'd kind of be like that defensive unit where Spo can switch aggressively. If you go back to that first build, AP, Kevin Love was almost optimal last game with a 9.5, and that basically reminds me of that first build because the build in second was Bam captain, and it had our workhorses: Bam captain, Jokic, Murray, Aaron Gordon, and then 2 cheapies: Christian Brown with 23 points, and then Kevin Love at 9.5. I know some of our RPS members had that build, so sorry for that, but that's basically 1 point, just 1 point separated second to first. And so if Kevin Love just got 1 more point basically in that run or an assist, basically, that lineup would have been optimal. And so that first build reminds me a lot of what a strong team is because, you have your 3 workhorses and then you have cheap guys that can obviously get there. Obviously, I think Jeff Green and Christian Brown are kind of a stretch to get there together, but you never know. The game 2, they both came in and were basically the offense. The offense is running through them and they were collecting all the fantasy points. So I like builds like that a lot. And yeah, just scrolling through this, I was interested to see
this Caleb Martin one looks really strong.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you're talking about you just need Jeff Green, maybe come in, hit a couple threes, could be optimal. assuming Caleb returns to that. I mean, would any of us be surprised if we saw like a GOAT Caleb Martin game? I think that's what Miami needs if they want to steal a game. I don't see them stealing a game.
A little bit there.
What?
We almost saw it last game for a little bit. When Caleb Martin hit 2 threes in a row, was already at like 16 at half.
Yeah, he had a good game. I think he could take it to the next level for sure. Well, let's see what he did. He played 32 minutes, shot 4 of 9 from the field. I mean, he looked good, and I think he's one of their guys. Like, he's one of their answers. Like, if they need him defensively, he's an answer. He hits the open threes, really solid there. But yeah, that's a really tasty build.
Yeah, you got 3 guys here that would fit this build too: Zeller, Highsmith, Jeff Green. I mean, if you think the game blows out again, you could go to Reggie Jackson. He was one of the first guys in, but feels safer with one of these 3.
He was like one of the first off the bench, got extended run. Everyone in the chat was like, WTF, what is Malone doing? Could happen again, definitely.
I will say with the Haywood Highsmith thing, I think I would do it at the expense of Zeller rather than the expense of Caleb Martin. Like, even though Zeller was a +4 off the bench, he had the quintuple goose egg, which if you don't know, that's 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, blocks, and steals. I think you might see, let's say Jokic goes to the bench, the Heat are like, screw it, we need offense. Haywood Highsmith at least provides a little bit more of an offensive punch than Cody Zeller. You know, maybe that's the case. Maybe you get 7 or 8 Highsmith minutes while Jokic is on the bench and Bam matches up with Jokic's minutes only. And that's entirely in the cards tonight. I originally had Highsmith as a fade, but I'm willing to sprinkle him in a couple teams because he's cheap enough. He's not going to kill you if he gets a 0. I mean, he's been priced almost. So I do like that shot on Highsmith, especially at the expense of Zeller.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, it's tough because it does seem like Miami is just going to revert back to what Spo feels is the best lineup out there, which honestly, Caleb Martin is like, I wouldn't be surprised if Caleb Martin played. I mean, what do you guys think for minutes? So he had 31 last game. I mean, he could have a huge role in the entire second half, right?
Oh yeah, definitely, for sure. And the thing is, like, man, so I was playing with the numbers while you guys were kind of talking to see how I can get these 1K guys to hit, specifically a guy like Reggie Jackson. And the build is like pretty obvious. So I know we kind of covered it, like in the Lakers series, Rubio was projecting guys like 0.1 and they were hitting. So obviously I tried that with Reggie, didn't hit at all. I upped it to 1, didn't hit much. And then I upped it to 3. And with 3 fantasy points, I get 1 Reggie Jackson lineup out of 150. And the build's like really obvious and tasty. Like it leaves only $100. So you can't like go up to a Zeller, a Highsmith, or anyone like that. It has to be a pure 1K guy. But, you know, like kind of a freebie. It has your 3 workhorses, a cheap starter, and then a guy that's going to play 20 plus minutes just with that 1K guy. So I just kind of wanted to give some insight on this 1K guy. Is he in play? And, you know, they're not popping like crazy like in that Lakers Phoenix series, but there is a way to get him to pop. And like you said, Reggie Jackson got 3.25 fantasy points last game. I projected him at 3. If he comes in, he can easily get that. It's just whether or not he comes in or not. So
you think there's any way that they I'm not saying leave him open, but unchecked. And I'm talking about MPJ. Like if you're Spo, you're like, all right, how do I how do I win this game? We're outmatched. Like the matchup on paper is just horrible. Been talking about that for a while now. You take a risk. Who's struggling right now? Michael Porter Jr. And then if you leave him kind of, not wide open, but unchecked. And if he starts missing a few, early on, it kind of mentally messes with you. Kind of like you see the Warriors do that all the time to bad shooters. Draymond won't even close. They'll just give him one of these. Just, we're not worried about you. Shoot it. Any chance they do that with MPJ? Because, I don't want to – MPJ, it's been very frustrating. But if that guy gets hot or catches fire or just through a scheme, scheming away from him, who knows? He could always – because we've all been so high on him. And then 2 games in a row, he's just been an absolute dud. And that's where ownership is going to follow too. He is should make for a nice leverage play tonight. Outside of just your standard people who run the opto and don't even look at anything, those guys will still have him in there because his projection's fair. But is there any? And I'll throw this to either of you guys, Rubio or Glock. But the case for MPJ, what would it be tonight?
Yeah,
I think.
Go ahead, Rubio.
I think it's going away from the zone. I think, like, right now, MPJ, you saw a couple of his shots. They were completely forced. It wasn't that typical catch and shoot in the corner, wide open, MPJ, pure stroke, 44% three-point shooter. No, it was fading to his left, trying to force up a shot. Or even the one bucket he had was a really, like, crafty layup off a pass from Jokic underneath the basket. But if they go away from the zone, all of a sudden you see MPJ hit 2 or 3 threes in the first quarter, like, he doesn't need much. Like, he just needs to outscore Gordon and Martin, really. And I guess you can throw Vincent in there. And 29 to 30 could do it. But it kind of goes to what we were saying earlier. Jokic, Murray, and Bam are popping so heavily right now. It might take more than 30 for a guy like MPJ to get optimal. But if you underproject Bam or Jamal, if you do a max of 2 between the 3 guys, even throw Jimmy in the mix too, one of them underwhelms, then it opens the door for an MPJ. Then it opens the door for an Aaron Gordon, a little bit more so than not.
I could be tripping, but to me, when I'm watching the game, it does feel like Miami is more committed to playing man-on-man when MPJ's out there. That's just kind of like my vague memory. I'd obviously have to watch like closely, but it does feel like when MPJ's out there, like Rubio said, there's always a guy attached to him, especially after game 1 when he looked good. Like, it always feels like there's a guy attached to him, at least one. And so, like, when he's coming off the screen, he's shooting those contested shots. I think if we were supposed to see more zone against him, he'd have more wide open threes. And I think Spo knows that. Like, MPJ is one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. Like, you can't really play zone against, good 3-point shooters, in my opinion. So that's why you see Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, when those guys are out there, I think that's when you see the zone. And that's how they broke the zone. Like, Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon are not 3-point shooters. So how you beat that? You slash, you get to the basket. You have 2-on-1 on the backside. So I do think, like Caleb Martin, similarly, MPJ are the leverage plays on the slate. And like AP said, like it's a super galaxy brain, but Spo is one of those galaxy brain type of guys where he could really go to that strategy. And like, maybe he does employ the zone when MPJ's out there, dares MPJ to shoot the open threes, kind of like a reverse mind trick game. We're kind of getting in the weeds, but this is how you create your edges, right? And in terms of ownership, Caleb Martin and MPJ, it's funny because those guys were flooding the optos early on in the series, and now it's like completely ignore. Like, it's just your 3 top dogs and then 4K guys and cheapies. So I definitely do think that's where the leverage is.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. Like, MPJ was optimal in game 1, and we haven't had a Caleb Martin optimal build yet, but it seems like we're getting to that. And so I'm definitely interested in Caleb Martin. And if you just look at it like game 3, like, people were trending down on Gordon. I really liked him for game 3, but then Lowry too. I know we were really high on him, but he wasn't a confident play for a lot of people out there. So it just goes to show, like, I would not, like, even though MPJ's been struggling, I wouldn't just full fade him. I think what you do is kind of what Rubio alluded to, make sure your rules are really dialed in. So for our build that we've been doing through these shows, as we've been going, I kind of made these adjustments based off of what you guys have mentioned throughout the show. The one thing that I did add in there was that group I made, which just says for the utility spot, we want at least 2 of 3 of Bam, Jokic, and Jamal Murray. And then I removed Jokic and Jimmy Butler from the captain spot. We still kept Bam and Jamal Murray as captain options. Rubio, let me go back over to you. I think we've done a really good job of kind of defining our captains and then what we want to happen at the util spot. And we've also done a good job at these builds are strong. Like, if you just look at every single build, you can make a strong case for all of these. So give me your thoughts kind of on where we're at. Is there anything that you're doing completely different from where we're at right now going into game 4?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're mostly on the same page. I think I got Gordon at like mid-20s, which is still very comparable to Martin and MPJ. So he still hits plenty for me, just not a lot in the captain is the only thing. I'm keeping Jokic captain in there. I think that would also be the only other thing that I'm really different on is when I ran my teams and stuff, Jokic captain still hit like almost 50% of the time. And I know we overproject Jokic a decent bit. But when you only do a max of 2, like if you only have 2 of Murray or Bam and Jokic, I think the captain is going to be way more likely to hit for Jokic there. And like I said, most of my teams with Jokic at captain are 4-2, but he hits. So let's just take a look. 4 of my top 5 teams at the captain spot. And I really look. It took a Murray 66 piece to edge him out of the captain last game. And obviously you know how the captain works, 1.5 times and stuff. But if
that's a good call.
Jokic has a very strong chance of being in the optimal captain there. And I don't want to completely rule that out, but at the same time, like that Jokic, Bam, Murray thing has been the one consistent piece throughout 3 games of this series, and it's very hard to get away from. And I have a build right now that I'm looking at with a cheapie or a mid-tier at the captain spot, and it's those 3 guys in the utility with, you know, a couple guys too. It's really easy to just roll those guys because you know their roles. You know, Jimmy even scored 28 last game, shot pretty well for his standards, 11 for 24, hit a couple threes, wasn't even close to the optimal. And I think that might be a conversation we can have is, are we over projecting or under projecting Butler just a bit? I don't really think so. I mean, this matchup's tough. The ankle's a little bit banged up, and that's what opens the door for Murray, who has a usage rate very comparable to Jimmy, despite having Jokic on his side too. So I think we're mostly on the same page. The cheapies are a little bit, you know, of a conundrum to me still. I don't trust Christian Brown at all. I'll go ahead and make this. You know, obviously, like the video if you haven't already. Go into the comments, predict the final score, what you think it'll be. Shout out who wins as well. But if Christian Brown scores 15 plus, I'll tell you what. If Christian Brown scores 15 plus, I'll give anyone in the comments a chance to give my punishment. It has to be 15 real points, but we'll pick the best punishment. We'll do it for game 5, and I'll follow through with it. We saw me eat a hot chip last year, and I threw up everywhere. It was terrible. And if you want to see me suffer again, put it in the comments what punishment you'd like to see. Christian Brown has to get 15 real points, though.
Raw? So raw points. Raw points.
15 raw.
15
raw fantasy.
Just like Zion.
So I reran this. I put Jokic back in there, but I do have to adjust my rule because naturally he should be capped, because if you think back to the rule I made, and this was why in Showdown you should be very careful with your rules, but now it's still going to, if I have a Jokic captain, it's going to force both Bam and Jamal Murray into the lineup. So it kind of goes against that initial rule that we were playing. So you adjust that. All you do is you add Jamal Murray, you add those other 2 captain plays to the rule, and it fixes it. I believe at least, because then you'd have a Jokic plus maybe at least 1 of Bam or Murray, which I like that because your builds are going to be very thin. And you could see that I only had 3 of my Jokic, and it was forcing in just the absolute cheapies there. Glock, as we polish this up, what are you seeing? Are you liking where our path is right here? Is there any strong lean for captain that you're feeling tonight? What do you feel about these final builds?
No, yeah, I definitely like the path. I was while Rubio was talking, you kind of read my mind because I was going to tell you let's check Jokic captain back in and rerun it and see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm going to redo that rule also while you're talking.
Yeah, yes. So yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same page. I think we kind of touched on the last show. Like as you get deeper and deeper into a series, unless you get those outlier performances from a guy like Christian Brown, if you're playing a close game script, it is harder to become unique. And like even that Bam captain build that was in second place last game, I think it was a massive chop, like for maybe like 2K or something. Like, and that was like I told you guys, 1 point off from being optimal. Like if Kevin Love just got that 1 fantasy point, it would have been a 2K chop instead of 130K, whatever it was, with that Christian Brown captain. If you do build similarly, like with that Christian Brown captain team, it's going to be way more chop this time. But yeah, like I basically agree with the path we're on. Like I think we nailed the game script where, you know, I think, unfortunately, I do like Kevin Love, but can he get you those fantasy points when he's out there? Because he's going to ride Pine similarly to Max Struss in that 4th quarter, most likely, unless Spo makes some dramatic adjustment. But yeah, I like the mid-tier builds. I do think we get different. Look, Nikola Jokic he's popping a lot now. I'm curious how much you get of him at the captain spot.
34%.
Yeah, and that's 150 builds, right?
150, yep.
Yeah. I mean, look at his first build. It's good, man. It's good. It leaves 0, obviously, but I think your chances of this team being duped versus a mid-tier captain and like filling out the salary that way, like that 50K using all the salary versus a mid-tier K 50 using all the salary. I think that build has a chance to be way less duped than, a mid-tier build. But yeah, I like the path for sure that we're going. Just one thing that I mentioned, Jeff Green and Christian Brown hitting together. I have my doubts, but obviously, it's kind of bitten me all series long. I probably would prefer a different cheapie there. Like if I do have Christian Brown, maybe I pivot Jeff Green to a guy like Haywood Highsmith, and kind of take my chances there. But I really like what I'm seeing for sure. Oh, the Reggie Jackson build. Interesting. You have him at 3.
I put him at 3.
And he's still
but like right here, I wonder if this is what Rubio was looking at. Maybe not, but I kind of like it. You get Bruce Brown in there, Gordon. No Jamal Murray, though.
Yeah,
and that leaves 0.
Very similar to what I was looking at. If you fiddle with Brown and Jackson, it would be more like Green or Brown, but you can do that. This is another thing, not to steal, not to take away from interrupt you a lot, but
we're not playing Reggie Jackson tonight. We can't do that.
I'm not going to tonight, like individually. I'll still do the max of 2, probably between Vincent Lowry and stuff. But if they combine for 30, they're cheap enough right now to hit optimal together.
Who is that you're talking about?
Strus and Robinson together.
Strus and Robinson, yeah.
That's a big wild card on the slate. Like, can Strus get there in his time, and can Kevin Love get there in his time? Yeah. Either or. Those guys, and they're known to be aggressive early on in games. So it's like, man, like if they just go off and you don't have them early on, it's like, man, yes, they're going to be riding pine, but they may have already done the damage to be optimal. You know what I mean? So
I really I really want to take a shot on Caleb Martin. What do you think his cat like? So I disagree at the 0.5%, but you never know. If Caleb Martin just has one of those games, he's got to be really low owned at the captain spot. And look, if you're trying to solo ship, taking a shot on him and going like 20 captain builds in your pool or something like that, I don't hate that. All these builds look so strong.
One thing I like to think about, like when building out my lineup, is like, has this guy shown the upside to where he can be optimal? And Christian Brown last game, obviously never in my wildest dreams I would have built that lineup, so I can kind of live with the results there. Like, has he ever shown that upside in the past? No, so I'm definitely not ever building it. But a guy like Caleb Martin, like, yes, like he's shown it in that Boston series. He was the optimal captain, I think, multiple times. So, like, I would be totally in, especially at the ownership. And I know you're scrolling through some of those teams, like Caleb Martin and MPJ, like, no one's going to click both of those guys together in a lineup. So you can just take that to the bank. It's going to be way less of a chop for sure. It could be even solo ship maybe, but I love those builds for sure.
I'm just so surprised. So we've all stated we're high on Bam. We like Bam. We like Murray. We like Jokic. I'm just so surprised, even with that rule in place, how little we get of those 3 together. If we get another Jokic, Murray, Bam, like when I'm doing my review where they're optimal at the util spot, I'm going to kick myself if I don't have at least like 20 builds of that combination. Like I might have to just add some builds. I was going to run 50 tonight. Maybe I run 70 with making sure I have that combination just because it's been so strong. But again, I think it's more likely that 2 of the 3 are in there, but it's not like their prices have changed that much and their production's been so predictable. But all right, fellas, if you haven't yet, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It helps us out a lot. Again, game predictions, post them in the comment section below. We will shout you out. You'll get some RPS swag sent out to you. The winners. So if you missed your name being called out, Alabama Jones, DFS Rez the Goat, LeBrier, however you say it. Glock's over there laughing. You 3 won last game, all very close. We couldn't decide on who's the best, so we're just giving out 3. Hit us up on Twitter, Rumpier Sports Twitter account, or send me a message, and I'll make sure that you get hooked up. Rubio, let's give our game 4 predictions.
Yeah, I think I'm going with the under yet again. I'm going Nuggets 107, and I'm going the Heat at 99. So that's my prediction. You get to put my punishment in the comments too if Christian Brown goes 15 raw.
Who's your favorite captain? Also, we'll add that one.
Lowry, Jokic, and then Jeff Green.
Giving us 3. I only asked for 1. I mean, Rubio. A man of the people.
I don't want to say 1 and then not run it in my main team. Then people will call me a liar.
That's why you got to sub. You got to sub to get the final answer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can change. Doesn't matter. Glock, your final score prediction and who's your favorite captain tonight?
Yeah, man, I've just been so wrong on these. I'm kind of scared. It's like I'm jinxing it, but I'm just going to go Denver win again. It won't be a blowout, kind of like how last game was. I think it'll be a little more close throughout. Obviously, Miami's at home. I'm going to go 105 Denver, 95 Miami. So Denver wins by 10, but they kind of increased the lead with some garbage time free throws towards the end. So that's kind of how I'm scripting it out. And then my favorite captain. Yeah, my favorite captain, obviously, it'd be Jokic for sure. And then my favorite mid-tier captains, I already handled some teams. I think I'm with Rubio, Kyle Lowry, Max Struss again, and Gabe Vincent, most likely.
All right, very good. My score prediction is 108-105. Miami Heat winning. I think this series goes on a little bit further, and they win due to efficiency in a big game from Caleb Martin, who's going to play more minutes tonight. I think he's going to get around 34 plus.
I like that.
He's going to have a big game. He's my favorite captain tonight. If you haven't yet, use the summer. If you're not a member, use the code SUMMER33, 33% off your first payment over here. We'll have the Showdown show. I believe they're going up to lock. That's Big T and JSU premium only tonight. We got the rundown starting right now with Spread and the gang. And we got the swing for the fences after that. So a jam-packed day of content over here at Run Pure Sports. For Rubio, for Glock, I'm AP. Run Pure.